Well, a rendezvous is a gathering of individuals from back in the 1640 it started, and we run to 1840. It's a period, and it covers mostly colonial people through the mountain man era, and it's pre-Civil War. And what the mountain men would do is go out into the wilderness, trapping mostly, hunting, some just because they wanted the solace and didn't want to be bothered, and they would supply themselves for a year or sometimes 6 months. But they had their supplies, and they all knew where the gathering point would be, and the colonials would come out by wagon train or mule pack and set up a rendezvous, which basically brought in the goods that the mountain men and trappers needed to resupply for a year, and also a point where they could trade in their pelts and what they had gathered. And we have both a collection, as you notice down through here, is what we call Sutler's Row. And Sutler's Row is basically the vendors, Hudson Bay and such, that would have come out to meet with the mountain men in some remote area. And they would bring the goods and services to the mountain men. And we have what we call buckskinners, that is the mountain men. You'll see them running around here in buckskins or similar attire, and you can tell the difference between a colonial because most are wearing knee breeches and a shirt and a little merchant's cap. I personally prefer this little sailor's cap, I guess in lieu of better words, and I wear the trappings of a mountain man right now. I also portray colonial. And but anyway, we all gather here. We even have a display of Indian teepees down here. We have Native Americans with us that perform all night. And during the night, you'll wander around through here, and it's truly about fun and living history exactly as it was lived back in those time periods. We are the National Rendezvous and Living History Foundation. The organization was created as a spin-off from the National Muzzleloading Rifle Association, which is a national organization that also follows the guidelines and the rules of the National Rifle Association. All of our purposes are living history, to teach the history that is being left out of history books right now. And we want to get out and show people exactly what it was. One of the common questions that we get asked by the public here is that a real fire? The public has this conception that at 5 o'clock we all go back to the hotel. We don't. Life starts in this encampment when dark gets here. Music's playing everywhere you go in camp. There's people making music. There's gatherings of individuals that just sit around and joke, and nobody gets out of line. We have a great time. This is our tavern right here. We have a tavern open to every camper that's in here. It stays open till midnight and shuts down. And in there they have snacks, beverages. They play all kinds of games, from a game called Two-Card Guts to a game called Farkle, to many, many games that are period correct games that were played back in that time period. And we enjoy the whole thing.
My brother had come to a few, and he loved it, and he just talked it up so much I had to come. And as soon as you do, you know why everybody is here, because it's so fun, and there's so many great people in this hobby. You know, there's so many different aspects of this hobby that you can get interested in. I started out, I was more interested in clothing just because it's really fascinating to me, but there's all other people go into it for other reasons. There's people that really like the research, and there's some people just come for the fun. But you know, the shooting is amazing. It's pretty incredible what you can do with a little bit of black powder and a ball. Grew up in the country, and we ran around on 60-something acres and played in the woods and threw tomahawks and watched Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett and all that stuff. That was really big during the time period. But yeah, and that really got you interested in just like being outside, so it's not that big of a stretch. You gotta like camping. It's interesting because I asked this girl the other day, I said, when did you start this? She goes, well, I was I was in diapers and being drug in a wagon. I was like, okay, so you've been at this a little while.
Yeah, it's quite amazing when you see just a little toddler, somebody maybe having a little carriage or something, and watch them grow up, and all of a sudden they turn around and tell you they're 16, 17. It's like, you know, you're amazing that they're still coming to these. And it's just the fun.
It becomes one big family too.
Yes.
Everybody's like, they kind of watching each other's kids, and everybody's just.
Yeah, we're just one big family. Yes. And you stop and figure here, this is more of a community than you actually see in other places, because we watch out. So that's just like I would treat her as my sister, you know, and he could be my brother in that, and that's how we treat it. If something happened to somebody, we be there for them. It don't matter who they are and where they came from. You know?
Everybody.
We're not prejudiced here. We're not against anything here. We're just one happy family, and we enjoy it.
Everybody gets excited when the latest archaeological dig comes up. They're like, oh, they just found a shipwreck off of something, and everybody start talking about all the research that they're pulling out of the ocean or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like the Titanic, you know, where they just pulled up something, a violin, still in a case. Now, that's worth billions of dollars, but it's the finding of it. It's the history of it. You go back and say, who actually had that violin? And you do your search on it. And that's what a lot of people look for.
Irony is I was never interested in history in school. I hated it. It was like my worst class. It was not interesting. They didn't present it well. I mean, it's, you know, you've got to cover a certain amount of facts, and history doesn't get any smaller. It just keeps growing as we, you know, every day, every minute. So there's a lot for the teachers to cover in order to pass the SATs or whatever tests are running now, but they have to skim across it. So when you actually dive in a little further and start discovering like weird and really cool facts. Like,
well, you have to do your search on whatever you want to portray. Okay, if you want to portray a long hunter or whatever it may be, you have to do your search on it, and that's the best way.
Yeah, that'll save you a lot of money if you decide what it is you want to be portraying. If you're a farmer in the 18th century, what, you know, 18th century is 100 years. You have to narrow that down. What part of the 18th century you're portraying. If you're doing the 1750s, then this is the typical clothing the man would wear in the 1750s. Everybody's at different levels on the learning process, and some people don't go any further than I'm showed up, I got a tent and some funny clothes, and I'm happy with it. You know, it's like I'm gonna hang out with my friends.
Hey, good girl. Good shot.
This is a hawk and knife competition. It all depends, how you win, it all depends on how the range officer sets that up. Most times with the hawk, they will place a playing card horizontal, and you have to cut that card in half is the goal. With a knife, they'll place the card vertical, and your goal is to stick the knife in the center of the card. My husband's been rendezvousing for about 18 years. I've been rendezvousing for 15. I sat and watched for a couple of years, and then decided this is something that I might want to try. And we've been somewhat successful at it. Some days are better than others.
The period that we represent officially as an organization goes up to 1840. The period that I try to represent is from the French and Indian War, from the mid-1750s up to the Revolutionary War. And during that time with the hawk and knife, they would have used them both for protection as a weapon, and also used them for cutting wood and for helping with dressing a deer. So they used them for the chores and for protection. So they were used for throwing, but that was last resort. And they'd usually use their guns. Some of the fellows in history has written that they were able to load their guns on the run. Turn and fire, run, load the guns again and turn and fire. And when they got too close, to be able to just take the hawk and throw the hawk.
That's a 10 right there.
That could be a 10 there, Ron.
Yeah.
These are actually like a hunting situation. The targets are placed with brush and, you know, just like a real animal would be, not out in the wide open. And we use our primitive bows and primitive arrows, just like our ancestors did, to make meat, which was your food, okay? So we shot squirrels, deer, rabbits, anything. And these are some of the bows this is called a self bow. It is, the reason it's a self bow, it's one piece of wood. Okay, this is the way the Native Americans would have made a bow, out of one piece of wood, because they had nothing to laminate together like we do nowadays. Okay, this looks like a piece of Osage, and which is more native to Tennessee and all like that, but we use mulberry, ironwood, all the woods that are available, dogwood. Now this is an Osage bow too, but it's a little bit more fancy. It's got copperhead on it, and you know, it's just a longer bow, a little bit more fancy with horn nocks. But it's just how fancy you want to go with your self bow. We have no glass on these bows, no fiberglass. Okay, and you have to use a self-nocked arrow. It's a wet one, but these are, you can hand me a plastic one too. Hand me a plastic knock. This is the plastic knock. These are really not allowed here. We're supposed to use self-knock, which that means whatever the arrow is made out of, that is what the groove is in, and we wrap it so it won't split. Okay, these are more traditional type arrows. But that's our competition, and we score as 5 for a body hit and 10 for the vitals. We have vitals marked out. Well, I portray a long hunter. Okay, a long hunter was a white man, maybe a half-breed back in the 1700s, but he went on a long hunt and he hunted for the forts. Okay, he was like the roving Walmart. He'd go out and get meat and put it at a designated location. You know, they could eat rancid meat back then. We could, but you know, nowadays we can't. So they would send a runner out from the fort every 3 or 4 weeks and pick up the venison or whatever was hanging there at a predetermined location. And these guys were called long hunters because they went out in Indian territory, and it was in Indian dress, and they knew all the Indian ways, and they used a bow just like an Indian, and they used their guns too, you know. But if they were close to hostiles, they would use their bow because they were making money by bringing meat in. So on their long hunts, what might have been 2 months, 3 months, they'd go out and then come back to the fort to get paid. And they laid around and just goofed off because they hunted and risked their life for these people, and they were always held in contempt because they always thought they were sorry, because they just come around, drink, and lay around, you know, for a couple of weeks, and then they'd go out on another long hunt. So that's why they're called long hunters. Well, they mostly knew how to hunt, okay, but then they learned how to hunt and evade detection, okay. These were like the early Navy SEAL dudes, okay. So they went out in Indian dress. They could pass for Indians at a distance, you know, but you know, tribes were territorial. They didn't want nobody in their hunting grounds and stuff, but these guys would go in, slip in, get their game, get out.
I went to an event in Doddridge, Tennessee, and I asked them why they never had one in North Carolina, and they said, find some land, we might do it. So I gave them my, you know, information, and about 4 years later, they called me, you know, big smile come on my face, and they come and looked at the site and said, yeah, I believe it'd work. So it just went from that. People like it, and because we've had them from Nova Scotia and Alaska, Texas, Wisconsin, Florida, Alabama, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, just, you know, about 2/3 of the United States. Surprised me they come to a little hole in Yagan County. Yeah,
oh, you can camp
site. You can camp on the creek bank, or you can camp up on the hill, or you can camp in the woods. So you've got a variation. Yeah, you know, ever since I was a kid, I've stayed on these creek banks, swung on a grapevine, and skinned a possum, made me a quiver, and cut ash, made me a bow. So, you know, I've kind of been doing this all my life. I didn't know this was going on till, well, about 2002 or 3.
Where's home at for you originally?
Originally, I was born, you can't believe this, I was born in a hotel in San Diego, California during World War II.
Oh, man.
I'm serious. From there I got to the hospital, but yeah, back during the war, right, and when I was born in 43, there, I was born actually in the Golden West Motel. And then they shipped me to the hospital.
I got into rendezvousing because my husband belonged to a gun club 4 miles up the road. And he said, "You'd love to come up and do this. You like history." So I went and I fell in love with it. I'm a seamstress. I'm also Native American. My native tribe is Lenape. We're from all of eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, lower New York, upper Maryland, and upper Delaware. I actually portray my ancestor that married a German Mennonite. So I dress both native with a mixing of English and German clothing and whatever I can trade with or make. I sew on a hand crank sewing machine that most people think sewing machines didn't come to be until just before the Civil War. That is not true. Sewing machines were first invented in the 1750s in France, Germany, and England. I love doing my handcraft. I make any number of clothing. I mostly do custom clothing because I like the clothes to fit the person. And at that time period, they didn't have patterns. Everything was basically a square and a rectangle. And so you just rip it, sew it, and attach it to the person. In the Native American culture, we are a matriarchal society where everything is done according to what the women elders say. The women elders say do it, you do it. If they say no, then you don't do it. Unfortunately, in history, during the Revolutionary War time period, and the French and Indian War time, the younger natives started to listen to the Europeans, and they wanted to go to war, where the elders said, no, it's not the time, and that's when there was a big split. And that's basically what happened is we got into the French and Indian War and during the colonial war, tribes were split. Some wanted to stay with the British, some wanted to stay with the American side.
I would like to add that this camp is also made up of artisans and craftsmen who come in and actually create the products exactly as it was done in the time period, from everything from clothing to furniture through fire, I'll say black powder guns. And one of the good things that happened in this camp, all the food is prepared the same way that they did back then, and this wonderful looking peach cobbler that a lady just brought me was made in a Dutch oven over an open fire.